Welcome to Rare on Air, the monthly podcast from Eurordis, Rare Diseases Europe. I am your host, Julian Poulan, and once a month, we will be exploring the challenges, experiences, and successes of people who live with the rare condition. In today's episode of Rare on Air, I have the privilege of speaking with Nicole Faccio, last year's winner of our Eurordis Social Media Award. Known as Facciolita on Instagram and TikTok, where Nicole has amassed over 30,000 and 100,000 followers respectively, Nicole shares with me her journey of living with lymphedema and using social media to raise awareness of life with this condition. Nicole talks about how her views and methods of managing lymphedema have evolved over the years, particularly with regard to her embrace of the essential compression garments needed to control the condition's lymphatic swelling. Originally from Puerto Rico and now based in London, her story is one of personal resilience and a mission to educate both the public and medical professionals. Her dynamic and creative social media presence continues to successfully foster a mutually supportive community while promoting a positive perspective on life with lymphedema and other rare diseases. Nicole, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a minute and it's been a long time coming.
I think the last time we met was in Stockholm at the Eurordis membership meeting. How did you find that meeting?
Yeah, no, that was awesome. It really opened my eyes for many things. It was great. And it was great to connect with so many people involved in the rare diseases. So yeah, it was awesome.
Because what was your involvement with Eurordis up to that point? I believe you would have received our social media award the February before that conference in 2023. When was the first time you may have heard of Eurordis actually, or learnt of this European rare disease community?
Yeah, precisely right. To be fair, I didn't hear about it much. I think the first time I heard about it was like 2021, maybe, because I heard about Rare Disease Day.
Right.
That's the first thing I found out with like the hand branding. And I thought that was beautiful. And I didn't know primary lymphedema was a rare disease. So I was super surprised. And then my left hand is the one with the lymphedema that I was born with. So I was like, imagine like a picture like this. I was like very intrigued by it. And I have pink garments. So I was like, in that moment, I was just starting in social media. So for me, it was like, oh my God, I'm meant to be moment. The other thing was that Rare Disease Day is the 28th of February. And my birthday is the 1st of March. So I was like, oh my God, meant to be, like, well, I mean, it's the 29th, but the 28th when there's no 29th, right? So I was like, this is crazy. Also, Lymphedema Day is the 6th of March. But so within a week, I have Rare Disease Day, which, celebrating lymphedema in that moment, my birthday, and then actual World Lymphedema Day. So I felt like all my stars and universe were aligning.
So, of course, we've already started talking about your condition, lymphedema. And in today's episode or in today's conversation, I'm really looking forward to learning more about your story. And so if we may jump into it, how long did it take for you and your family to receive a diagnosis? And what are your earliest memories of growing up with lymphedema?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was born with lymphedema, but it's funny because it's not the correct context is not that I was born with lymphedema, is that I was born with a syndrome that causes lymphatic malformations. And for that reason, I got lymphedema and I had the presentation of the swelling at birth. In my case, I got diagnosed apparently from when I was officially diagnosed 9 months old. But the moment of birth, I had the swelling. So imagine like it was like probably quite chaotic of like, what does the baby have? Also because it's resilient. So lymphedema, because it's accumulation of fluid, if you massage it and if you put compression, that's the treatment, then it goes down. And my mom noticed that if she would like treat it herself, even though she didn't know any of the mechanisms or anything, apparently I started wearing compression garments even before I was officially diagnosed. In that journey, then we had to go to many doctors. My parents, I always say this story is not mine, it's theirs, because imagine they were like 26 years old with a baby that all of a sudden has like something that was born and they didn't have answers, and it was in the 80s. So, I mean, it must be quite tough. I mean, it is quite tough. So there are these type of people that take no for an answer, and it's like, we need to continue. And from hospital to hospital, from states to states, because I'm Puerto Rican, so we could travel to Puerto Rico, and then a lot of the doctors in Puerto Rico are trained in the United States in many hospitals. We ended up in Delaware in a children's hospital there that actually had seen lymphedema patients before from the pediatric standpoint. And that's when finally I got diagnosed, and we were giving up some of the protocols that, funny enough, seemed to be kind of trial or experimental back then and are still the best practices. Some people call the gold standards of lymphedema management still to this day. So yeah, that's how it all started in terms of diagnosis. So I feel quite big affinity when I started to hear all the stories in what we said just now, the membership meeting last year, because there were parents, medical professionals, people in the industry from pharmaceuticals, and not that many, but a few patients like me. And I could hear the stories, particularly from parents. And it's like, still with all the rare diseases, very similar. The diagnosis story is a thing because it takes a while to get there.
Interesting. So you've detailed what life was like for your family in those early days of your life. If I may ask, how would you describe lymphedema to someone who may not have heard the condition? What exactly is it in quite simple terms?
That is a chronic illness of chronic swelling. So that's the easiest way of saying it. And the reason there is chronic swelling is because there is a malformed lymphatic system. So a malformed or, not good lymphatic system, therefore the accumulation of fluid happens. And that's the easiest way to explain it. And this can be because of genetic malformations, or it can be for a trauma.
I see. No, that's well explained. I believe you've previously spoken about going from seeing your compression tools as an inconvenience to eventually considering them as your best friends, I believe. Was that an individual moment that you can recall where you started referring to them as that, or not quite?
Yeah, everything that had to be associated with lymphedema management, the compression garments or the bandages that you use for like more intensive treatment or anything, I had a very negative reaction to, very negative point of view. It was like, no, like I said, I created these rules for myself to just wear it at home or like, well, not around, when I say people, like maybe only the close ones, but not in public. Because I kind of want to appear normal. Like I didn't want to do that in public. I thought that those two things didn't coexist. And in that journey of mental health, I also had to come to terms that I needed to get better physically and put that time and effort in order to feel better, because going down the path of not doing what I needed to do only was deteriorating my body, and that was only deteriorating my mental health as well. I finally found like a source of a group that could help me. That journey was extremely hard. It was the darkest part of my life of, feeling like this huge feeling that everybody in the disease community also expresses, the being alone. But I experienced all these things that we experience with doctors. People talk about medical gaslighting and like, being turned around. And it's not about giving a hard time to doctors at all, because I have a lot of doctors that I love and I hold to my heart very dearly. But it is hard sometimes to find answers when you have something like this. And then it only makes you feel even more inadequate, where the doctors, the person that you think should help you, you don't get answers or help. So finally, after years, in this moment, by the way, I lived in New York City. And when I moved in to New York City, I was like, oh, loads of things in New York City, the capital of the world. No. It took me like 4 years to find appropriate help. I went into this journey of like trying to recover back my health. And that meant going into Germany, one of the lymphatic clinics, because there are lymphatic clinics in the world, but not everywhere in the world. That's another challenge, the availability of treatment and knowledge, which we can tackle later. But I was recommended go to this clinic. They had much more research on what I had as well, more improvements in all that toolkit I was giving as a child that I was following, but actually reinforcing the toolkit as well. It was like, well, you were told this as well, and we're just saying it is this, maybe some tweaks here and there. They did give me something that was life-changing for me, which was a diet associated to lymphedema, or the one that I had. that really changed because I was having a lot of struggle with food as well. So between food and the swelling and, not taking care of myself, I was a ticking time bomb. And slowing down, taking care of myself, spending time, money, and a lot of like those stars aligning on like not only physical, but I had done some mental health work, but kind of clicking and saying, this is where I have to be responsible, right? They're telling me, there are these things, not only do them in the clinic while I'm there, incorporate them in your life. And I decided to take that approach. Everything turned around. Not that I ever got or will ever get a cure for lymphedema. Lymphedema has no cure, but I did see the change in my body. I did see the change then in turn into my mental health and kind of started cementing. And after all that, I was the testament of what people around say, maybe in whispers, or like I had heard before the toolkit that I was giving as a child, but I was never told that it really works. It was just like, oh, do this, and don't do this. And I was like, oh, I don't know. That doesn't sound feasible. I mean, I thought I knew better, but I didn't. And because for years, maybe 2-3 years, I was a embodiment of testament of like, if you do these things, you'll be better. And I promise you, you will. I felt the moment that turned everything around was I felt guilty.
Right.
I felt like if I didn't give back this information, I was contributing to the problem. That if I didn't give back to this information, I was part of everything I had struggled with to get to that point. And I felt that if the only way I can give back is through this thing that it's called Instagram in that moment, because it was so accessible to me in that moment. And a few years later, I started doing a little bit of advocacy in closer knit groups earlier on, but it wasn't like that, like open until like 2019, 2020, that it was only like to a few people. But to be very honest, that was the moment that turned it around. It's like, I feel I am a source of information and a testament of like what I think other people should know. And my hypothesis was that a lot of people didn't have that information readily, or a representation of, if you do these things, you get better and you actually can live incorporating these things in your life. Because again, sometimes it's very detached, and you guys talk about it a lot in Eurordis, the holistic approach, right? Sometimes it's very detached. The doctor, you go to the doctor, you're giving the paper, you're like, here you go, bye-bye. Or like the same with the garment. Oh, here you go, maybe use this, try it out, come back in a year. And there's no like, you will experience these challenges, or like go to see this mental health professional, or this is how you can do this in your life. No, there's no coaching around that. So that was really, it's funny because it was a negative feeling that turned things around, and it was guilt.
I see.
Yeah, it was. I felt I had a sense of giving back to the world, right? That it was my commitment to pay it forward.
Right, that's really interesting. Of course, guilt isn't something that we necessarily want felt across the rare disease community. But no, it's interesting you say that about the toolkit, and it's really positive to hear about the impact it's had on your life, and the fact that it's been the thing that's inspired you to raise awareness of approaches to lymphedema. Because of course, the problem of having a rare disease and perhaps being of a small patient community is many people probably don't feel they have many tangible reference points or models which can inform their own outlooks or their own practices in daily life. So that's really interesting. I will be continuing my conversation with Nicole in just a moment, but I would like to remind you that online tickets are still available for ECRD 2024, the 12th European Conference on Rare Diseases and Orphan Products. The conference is taking place in just 2 weeks' time on the 15th and 16th of May, and it is Europe's largest patient-led policy-shaping event in rare diseases. The conference is a must-attend for anyone looking to remain informed and engaged in pioneering solutions to improve the lives of people living with a rare disease. Don't miss your opportunity to be among the many hundreds of our participants. Get your tickets for ECRD 2024 today at rare-diseases.eu. Of course, you've mentioned your Instagram. You've got tens of thousands of followers on Instagram. Can you tell us the story of when you first started using Instagram as a means of reaching out to the lymphedema community, raising awareness, and perhaps being a model for living with the condition?
Yeah, it all started as a test ground. One of the times I had to return to the lymphedema clinic because that's something I will have to do several times in my life, forever and ever consecutively. And then I said, "Well, I'm gonna be in the clinic, and I don't work in those days. Well, I'm gonna be immersed in my care. Maybe I use this as a testing ground to kind of share it because, and I only had, a few hundred people, like every person in the world does, your friend community, people that you grew up with, people you went to uni with, or something like that, but not that widespread. And I said, I'm going to use this as a test ground because I know a lot of people that follow me right now just because of knowing Nicole don't know these ins to my life.
Do you remember the first post of yours on Instagram where you were essentially fashioning your compression garments?
Just before COVID, the February
Yeah.
that COVID broke down, I told a friend, I didn't have much colors. I think I only had like two colors to wear. But I told a friend, can you take me pictures? Like she had like a camera. So I did like a bit of like a styling game myself with my clothes. And like some of the colors, I only had like two colors in my arms and maybe two in my legs, and that's it. And yeah, it went around, and basically the pandemic broke like a week later.
Did you break through quite suddenly? Was it like when you started doing the videos that your, for
Yeah.
example, number of followers jumped up? And you mentioned, of course, people reaching out to you, I believe, on social media, asking for general advice because they have lymphedema. Was that through Instagram and as a result of this exposure? What was that like to have people coming to you? How did that make you feel? And what were the first kind of questions or messages that you got?
At the beginning, very overwhelming, if I'm honest. When I started kind of utilizing it as a test ground in like 2020, I was like obsessed with it. It was like, oh my God, I have so much in my head, so much creative input right now, like, because there's so much to explain. And oh my God, there's people like me also, and like trying to change things, like trying to make a difference. I also saw some of the associations I had worked with in New York because I was briefly associated just because that was towards the end of my stay in New York City before I moved to London with an organization there. But that was like a lymphatic association, it wasn't like a bigger forum. So I'm like, okay, makes sense, the lymphatic association. But when, you outsource it to a place that I was not relating to lymphedema, I was like mind blown. It's been amazing to outreach more and to create the visibility that I wanted. And that was the purpose originally, but it wasn't like influencer game, right? I don't consider myself an influencer yet either. It's like people say it like jokingly, and I'm like, yes, I'm a lymphedema content creator, but it's hard to change the purpose of that, right? Like it cannot be clouded. There is a need and suffering that a lot of people experience that's still the purpose that I want to keep driving. But yeah, the crazy thing is that so many people kind of complaining about on social media and the negativity. And for us, it's been exactly the opposite. It's been only but positive. It's changed the game for our community. And the massive amount of positivity I received through there as well, it's crazy. And I'm very grateful for it because, again, it's associated to a lot of negativity. I have received in the viral posts stupid comments, but it's not even like, it's maybe 0.5% to everything else. So it's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it is sad to hear about the negative comments, but I'm glad that they're just pebbles in a sea of positivity, so it seems. So that's really positive to hear about. And no, you should definitely be very proud of the awareness you've created and the community you've created, it seems, as well. We hear time and time again about what it feels like and the positive impact it has when you are a rare disease patient and you find yourself connected to a community for the first time. If I may ask, of course, you're from Puerto Rico. You now live in London. How long have you been living in London for?
6 years.
6 years. And you said you lived in also New York previously, and it sounds like you visited Germany for certain healthcare. It sounds like you have quite an international experience of being a lymphedema patient. Have you got any messages that you would maybe share with policymakers?
Yeah, I 100% have so many. A lot of the policies all over the world, when I say it's not only European level, it's each of the countries individually, right? Like they all apply different things for approvals or treatment. How many garments can you have? What treatment can you have? That's particularly for lymphedema, right? But like that with other rare diseases. The disassociation of what will be covered versus the patient need I don't get it. It's like, okay, now we found out there's a thing called lymphedema. If you get diagnosed with lymphedema, this is what we give you, or like what you're entitled for, is vastly separated from the reality. It was quite empowering to hear everything in Eurordis about the holistic approach that are trying to be taken, because I talked a lot at the beginning about mental health, and I took it for granted for a long time that I had done that for myself, and I can realize that it took a moment of my life in which I was massively struggling with anxiety and depression. I was like, I need the mental health professional, but a lot of people don't, right?
Yeah.
And that's not offered to them. There's so little help from the government. It's eye-opening. Like, there's so much need, and the systems are only reactive, not proactive at all.
Yeah. Well, like I think you said earlier, the word holistic approach or the term holistic care, it can often be a bit of a vague buzzword, but I think the viewpoints and experiences that you've shared make it very tangible in terms of what it could mean and should mean in terms of actions by policymakers. Obviously, you use fashion as a means of raising awareness about lymphedema and encouraging people to be more confident with the condition. Is there a designer brand that you would most hope to see produce compression garments?
Oh my God. Yes, all of them. all of the high fashion.
If you had to choose one.
If I had to choose one, I don't know, like anything, like imagine some Prada, like they do tights, or Gucci, they do tights, they should do compression garments. Well, look, it's interesting because compression garments are beneficial. I mean, these are medical made, but they're beneficial for anyone. If you hop on a plane, a lot of people get swelling in their feet. So they should be wearing compression for the flights, and it would be a game changer.
So it sounds like there's a very solid business case for the big fashion houses getting into the compression garment industry. Hopefully they do so. So before we say goodbye, Nicole, where can people follow you on social media?
Yeah, so my handle is Facciolita. That's my last name, Facciolita. My last name, but means like the little Facio in Spanish, more or less. And that's my handle on Instagram and TikTok, which are my two main social media channels. I also have a podcast called Normal Adjustments, and I'll be releasing a 4th season in the next month.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully people look you up and you gain even more followers. Nicole, thank you so much for speaking to me today.
No, thank you. Thank you for reaching out. And hi to everybody that I love in Eurordis, a very special place. And thank you for everything you guys do.
Thank you for listening to Rare on Air. And remember, in just a couple of weeks' time, on the 15th and 16th of May, Eurordis will be hosting ECRD 2024, the 12th European Conference on Rare Diseases and Orphan Products. The conference will present a major opportunity for people to network and exchange valuable insights on how to achieve real progress on rare diseases. To attend the conference online and get involved, visit rare-diseases.eu.